So I was going to say welcome, but we're actually guests in your house today, so thanks for having us.
You are very welcome. It's nice to see so many people here.
It's usually orange, and we made it green today. So.
Yeah, well, really, this is Gusto and Astranis, two YC companies. The YC building is just across the street, so we use this space sometimes.
Yeah. And Astranis, they make satellites.
That's right. So Gusto's a payroll kind of HR company, and Astranis, I think low Earth orbit satellites. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, nice. So I wanted to start by saying that I was in Techstars in London in 2017, running a different startup, and Tom came in to give a talk to us. And my main takeaway from that talk was something you said, which apparently is an Andreessen quote or a famous startup quote, which is, running a startup is like eating glass. At some point, you just have to learn to enjoy the taste of your own blood. Assuming this is true, why have you done it twice?
Oh my God. Well, I guess it's why I've not done it a third time, and I'm now an investor. So just a quick introduction for people who don't know. GoCardless is a B2B payments company. My co-founder Hiroki's been running it for 14 years now, almost 15 years. But I was only there for 3 years. So Monzo I feel like it's really my baby. I started that in 2015. It's an online bank in the UK. And we grew that from 0 people to about 2,000 employees. When I left, we had about 6 million customers. Now 13 or 14 million customers. So like a quarter of the UK population uses Monzo as their bank account. And that really did feel like chewing glass, actually. Just the highs are amazing, but hours later you hit a low, and it's that kind of metaphorical roller coaster. It really does. So hard to describe. I mean, it's like nothing else I've ever done. And now I'm an investor, it's frankly easy mode. Yeah. I talk to founders all day, I give advice, but at the end of the day, they all even out into like a sort of just a patter, Whereas when it's your company, the swings are just so extreme. I don't know how you're finding it.
Yeah, I think the longer you do it, you get better adjusted. The problem is like the further you go, the stakes just get higher and higher and higher. It keeps cranking up.
Yeah.
But you definitely need, I think, like a lot of security in other areas of your life if you're going to take such big emotional risks in your job.
I agree.
Super important. But so GoCardless, you didn't have to chew that much glass, or?
GoCardless was still a small company when I left. I was there 3 years. We were a team of 30. We had single-digit millions of revenue. It was a B2B payment process that kind of worked in the background. It was also basically ACH processing, so the payment cycle took 3 days. So it was never really real time in any sense. Like you have a few minutes of downtime and outage, actually no one notices. Monzo, we're processing 15,000 transactions a second. So you have a second of downtime and 15,000 unhappy customers. It was absolutely nuts. Every second counted there. It was on another scale.
How many co-founders in Monzo?
There were 5 co-founders originally. I mean, I'm in the middle of writing a book about this. There's a very turbulent founding story at Monzo. We were part of another startup, and basically the CEO fired everyone in a rage, and there were 13 of us at that old startup, and like 12 of us started Monzo. So in a sense, there were like 12 or 13 co-founders, but we just sort of relatively arbitrarily chose the title co-founder for 5 people. It was a very abnormal founding story, honestly.
Then you were the CEO. Did you feel like you bore the weight of, is that why it was so hard, because you were in the CEO role?
Yeah.
Were you able to share the load between the co-founders, or?
Not as much as I'd like, probably. I think I was, intentionally or unintentionally, I did a lot of the press. I was always, when a story came out about Monzo, it was always my face in the newspaper, good or bad. And I don't know how intentional that was. But I think, maybe I'm making excuses. I think the complexity of what we were trying to do just meant that we were always underwater. We got a full banking license. We built the banking technology from scratch. We acquired millions and millions of users, and people would build like the equivalent of Stripe, and it would be a 2-person team who would like go and build card issuing, now do direct debit issuing, now connect, like do international payments, do like on and on and on and on. And so the breadth of the problems we were solving, GoCardless did ACH processing. It did like a narrow wedge, and we just did about 15 of those in parallel at Monzo. And so it just felt like we were constantly underwater. Like the team could be 5 times bigger, and we still wouldn't have enough people.
Mm-hmm. And so it's 2 fintech companies. Is that like a good founder company fit? Like,
it seems like it. By the time I did Monzo, it seemed like at least I had 3 years of experience in payment processing. It felt like that gave me some leg up, but not too much. I think that's vital, because if you talk to any industry veteran in banking, and they'd tell you that starting a bank from scratch was totally insane, here are the 20 reasons you're going to fail. And I just didn't know any of those reasons, and so I went into it very naively. And honestly, I think that naivety is such a powerful ingredient. It's why a lot of these companies are started by people with relative inexperience. You just don't know what you're getting yourself into, and you figure it out along the way.
It's a hard balance, because what's the advice you give to people who are trying to decide which field to build their startup in? Because surely it's important that you have some domain knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, this is so varied, and it's a question I see a lot at YC. I've personally worked with 75 companies this year or something, and I'd guess 15 of those are pivoting even in the batch, and so I'm working with 15 companies to like pick a new idea. And there's a kind of rubric, like start with where have you worked previously, what did you study, what do your parents do for work, what do your friends do, like what are you interested in? There are just so many different ways to get ideas, but there are just so many examples of amazing companies being built by people with zero domain knowledge. I just don't think it's a prerequisite, actually. And had you done database stuff before Supabase?
I've done some database stuff. My first job was large scalable storage systems, so that was kind of my background.
Okay.
Then I went on a mad run of like starting a fashion tech company, clearly not very fashionable, starting a crypto company, which is all about timing, and the timing was very wrong. It was the start of 2018 when the huge crash happened, and then traction went to basically zero after that, so that was tough. But the good thing about starting to work on Supabase, I realized, was I'm a developer, and so with the fashion thing, I was like trying to get my head around the industry, like what do the users want? When you're building dev tools, you're the customer, so you just intuitively know a lot of those things, which felt like a huge unlock, honestly, for me.
Yeah, and that was the difference with Monzo and compared with GoCardless for me. GoCardless helps businesses collect business payments. I'd never really run a business. Monzo is a consumer bank account. I was a consumer, I used a bank account, so we could build Monzo for ourselves, and it did help a lot.
Yeah, and actually, so Monzo, for those who don't know, was like this revolution for people in the UK like myself, where all of a sudden it's app first, you don't have to go to a branch. There's a lot of neobanks now, but Monzo, I think, was one of the first great examples.
Yep.
how did you develop that insight to know that it was all about product, it was all about superior customer service?
We launched early and figured it out. And I had a lot of I did Y Combinator in 2011 with GoCardless. I had a lot of my notes. I've looked, because I'm writing this book, I've been back over a lot of my notes from the early days of Monzo, and they're just full of like YC mantras, right? Like launch early, talk to users. So when we were starting Monzo in 2015, there were 20 other people trying to start banks. And the other 19 were like, we're going to go through the license process and like do a big IT build and then do a big bang launch in 3 years' time. And that felt terrifying to us. So I was asking our team, like, how do you prototype a bank? Like, what does that even mean? And we figured out, and everyone is doing this now, but we figured out we could use prepaid debit cards as a kind of an MVP for a full bank account. And we gave these out. We came to Techstars and others, and we got almost 1 million customers using our prepaid card before the full bank account launched. And it enabled us to just iterate and experiment with all of this different stuff. We had no idea how we were going to get customers, frankly. I initially assumed we'd have to do like really high cashback or rewards or something like that. But it turns out no, like a really, really smooth user experience, a bit of virality and network effect with like sending and receiving payments, kind of like Venmo built into your bank account, amazing customer service, a very bright I've not got it here, a bright hot coral, like a pink card, so it's very eye-catching. All of those things really mattered. And then to wrap it all up, like a brand and a mission and a set of values that our customers really, really resonated with. Like Monzo became, and still is, honestly, 10 years later, like a social movement as much as a bank. Like it was an expression of your identity to use Monzo. It wasn't just, oh, I get more cash back here, so I'll switch. It was like, I believe the same things as these people. I believe banking is broken. It doesn't serve people properly. That it should be more personal and transparent and honest. Like it was a deeply values-driven, kind of mission-driven thing.
Yeah.
And it captured like a zeitgeist in a crazy, crazy way. We got to 1 million customers with 0 advertising spend. It was nuts. You ask a normal banking person, like, how much is it going to cost you to acquire 1 million users? The standard response will be about $250 million of marketing spend. About $250 per user, right? And we did it for 0.
Crazy. And I imagine it took a lot of audacity to do this in London, of all places, because banking in the UK especially, to me, seems like very, I mean, it's companies that have been around for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Like when you started to launch services without a banking license, were people like, what was the reaction of people in the industry? Were they upset? Or?
They thought it was a joke. They thought it was like, I love the book, The Innovator's Dilemma by Clay Christensen. And he describes this perfectly, that basically these huge incumbents have, not through mismanagement, but rather through reasonably good management, have optimized themselves into a local maximum. Like they're extracting maximum like fees and value out of the industry, but they're struggling to innovate. And then a new competitor comes along, and it looks like a toy. It's for kids, it's for young people. It doesn't have all of the features, all of the bells and whistles, and so people dismiss it and say, this is never going to be a big thing, like it can't do X and Y and Z. But the difference is it improves so rapidly that before long it overtakes the incumbents. And in a sense, the incumbents had to undermine their own business model to compete. We just said we're going to get rid of all of the fees and charges. We're not going to take any of them. We're going to find a different way to make money, basically. And we're going to have a dramatically lower cost base, so we don't have to have the same level of revenue per customer. The banks could have done that, but it would have involved like undermining their own revenue base.
And did any of them react by launching similar services? Or?
Yeah, they all tried to launch them. Like, there's a whole list of failed neobanks launched by the big... RBS alone had Bo and Metal, and they acquired a couple. JP Morgan had Fin. Like, you can go on and on and on. They all tried, and they all fucked. For like many different reasons, but one is their technology was built before the internet existed, and that they'd grown through acquisition. So they didn't have one shitty old system. They had like 50 shitty old systems that they patched together like Frankenstein's monster. That was one problem. Tech was impossible to change. The second problem was it was run by career bankers who thought like very rigidly about financial products and not about customers and the things they wanted to do. So like making sure I don't run out of money before I pay rent is not a financial product, right? Or like giving visibility over my balance is not a financial product. Like a loan and a mortgage and a credit card, they're financial products, but the day-to-day experience are not financial products, and so no one in the bank gave a fuck about them. And then the third problem was just like everyone was getting bonus based on these fees and charges. So for example, when you took your card abroad and you paid abroad, the banks, they're less bad now, but 10 years ago, especially in the UK, they'd charge you like 4% to pay on your card abroad. And I went into this thinking, oh, it must be very expensive to use your card abroad for the banks. That's why they're passing on these costs. It wasn't. They were already making tons and tons of money on foreign interchange, which is borne by the shop, the merchant, the restaurant. They're just adding another 4 or 5% on top just because they can. And so, for sure, they could launch a new product with lower fees, but like, they'd just make less money. So,
I think I remember you wrote at some point, though, that Monzo was losing £50 per customer per month because you were so generous.
£50 per customer per year, yeah.
So generous on that?
For 2 reasons, yeah. We had much less revenue and we had much higher, like initially very high costs. Because to get this prepaid card to market really quickly, we only thought 10,000 people would use it, so we didn't think it mattered that much. By the end, like 700,000 people were using it, and we were bleeding like 35 million a year. But we used a bunch of outsourced technology providers in the very early days to get to market quickly, like a card processor. We used Stripe to load money into your Monzo account. We took a acquiring charge on another card. So we bought interchange, like we paid interchange to get money into your Monzo card. And so we were putting like billions a year through Stripe just to load money into Monzo. And Stripe must be making 10 or 20 million a year in interchange off that.
Wow.
So we just took shortcuts to get to market quickly, which cost money. But over time, we just brought it all in-house. We rebuilt a core banking system. We rebuilt a card processor. Once we had the license, we could issue full like account numbers, so you could just make bank payments in. You could get your salary deposited directly into the account. And so it brought the cost way, way, way down. Now you can run a bank account, all included. It costs about $50 a year to fully run the bank account, including customer service, including fraud, including the plastic card.
Wow.
A big bank will be about $300.
And did you have to hire many people from the traditional banking system into Monzo?
Yes, mainly because our financial regulator required us to. We built most of the tech. I think of the first 20 engineers, only one had worked in a bank. And he worked in, basically he worked on a trading desk, building trading software. No one else had worked in banks. The banks themselves often don't build the software anyway. You go and talk to a banking executive about their software, and they treat it like this mystical thing that happens in faraway countries. And like any change to it is very, very dangerous and very likely to get them fired. And so we never change the software. But like the number of hops you have to go through to go from like bank CEO to actual software engineer, I would reckon is probably 7 or 8 different people in that chain. And so it just like, they just have no conception of how to actually build software. And so it didn't seem like an actual big disadvantage to not have any bank people writing the software, but the regulator required us to have people like a CFO, a chief risk officer, a chief compliance officer, on and on and on, which was tricky because it created this big cultural divide within the company. So.
And so the rest of the team was software engineers, product people, people who could build things quickly.
Yeah.
Was it difficult to find that talent in London, or?
No, it actually wasn't. I think when you choose to do something very, very hard and ambitious, like starting a bank from scratch, and I'm not going to compare myself to other very famous tech entrepreneurs, but you can imagine the most famous tech entrepreneurs set out to do something very, very difficult. And in one sense, they're making their life hard, but in other ways, they're making it easier because the smartest people want to join that mission. So when we said in London in 2015 or 2016, we're starting a bank from scratch and we're doing it properly, we're actually going to write all the software from scratch, all the best software engineers are like, sign me up, right? Because what else are you going to work on? Like some Twitter ads or something? It's just like really boring.
Yeah.
So we were the #1 employer on LinkedIn, I think, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, across all of Europe.
Crazy. And you would like be loud about your culture as well, right? You would publish blogs about how you work at Monzo, how there's such a focus on product. Is that as important as going out and talking about your product?
Yeah, I think it's the whole package, right? It's the equity you grant is going to be worth a lot of money, hopefully, because you're going to be a successful business. The mission and values resonate with the people you're trying to hire. They know they're going to have other talented people on the team alongside them, which really, really matters. Like the cash compensation we actually paid less than our competitors, but it was enough that it wasn't an issue. It's a whole package, but I think we just caught the zeitgeist more than anything.
And you brought a bunch of, I would say, innovative ideas to startups in the UK. One of them was you did a few big crowdfunding campaigns.
Yeah.
What was the reaction to that?
It was really fun. I mean, crowdfunding is an expensive, slow, operationally complex way to raise money. Like, it's really not an easy option. But we knew very early on that we didn't have the budgets of the big banks to sign up customers. We couldn't pay $250 per customer. We'd have to take a different approach. And so we lent into things like transparency, community centricity, like being a personal face. And the idea that you could buy shares in your bank was like a cool idea. And so we raised money from a VC, and we pushed the VC down and said, instead of giving us 7 million, we only want 5 or whatever, 6 or something, because we want to reserve money for crowdfunding. And we went live, and the first time we went live, we had so much interest, the crowdfunding servers melted down, like it crashed their site for a day. we finally got it back online and relaunched a campaign, and we broke the world record for crowdfunding. We raised $1 million in 96 seconds from, I think, 1,700 customers. And we capped the amount. We said you can only invest $1,000 each, maximum, because we wanted as many people to have a chance as possible. And then we repeated it. We did another 10 million. Then we actually had to create a prospectus, which is normally what you do when you IPO. Because we crossed the crowdfunding limit of, I think, 6 million, we raised $25 million in our next crowdfund and had to write a fucking 100-page prospectus, which is like going public for a company. We just did that for fun on the side. It was, in retrospect, totally bananas.
Yeah, I should say I participated in the crowdfund.
Cool.
I invested £1,000, but because it was so limited, it was like a raffle, right, to get in. You put your name in.
Yeah.
And so me and my friends, a bunch of whom now work for Supabase, we all signed up and then decided if one of us gets it, we'll split the investment. So I think me and Johnny put in £500 each, and so we're still praying for that to pay off in an IPO.
That should do pretty well, I think. I don't know exactly how much it'd be worth, but I would guess maybe 30 or 40 grand now.
Not bad, what do you think?
That's not a promise. I haven't done the math, but I hope it's...
It is under my name, though, so...
If this Supabase thing doesn't work out for you, then...
Yeah. Oh, great. And then, so now you've made the switch to the evil side, to the VC side.
Yeah.
What, you said it's easier?
By far.
Do you work with many people in fintech now? Is
A bit,
still...
yeah. So YC's just around the corner. We do 4 batches a year now. Each batch is around 200 companies. Each partner will typically work with 25 companies a batch. I've done 3 batches this year for no good reason. So out of 75 companies, actually my top one probably is a fintech. It's called Axiom. So it's like a DeFi trading platform. Basically, it's doing super well on Solana trading right now.
Wow.
I think they're the fastest company ever. Everyone's claiming this stat, but they're like the fastest to 100 million of actual revenue. Like not run rate revenue, they actually booked 100 million revenue in 4 months from founding. It's fucking nuts.
And are you envious at all of people starting companies in the current climate with AI and...
Yes and no. I think now is genuinely the best time in human history to be starting a company. I started at YC in end of 21, early 22, and honestly, the ideas then were not super fun. They were like third derivation of like a B2B SaaS app, and then AI came along and just everything was cracked wide open. And now the breadth of ideas that are just working super well is incredible, and that is amazing. And I wish I'd had that when I was a founder, but also I don't want the founder life. Honestly, it really is. It takes over everything else in your life, and there's no room for for me at least. I never was able to balance it, and being an investor is great. I get a little bit of like the reward of working with founders, but at the end, I sleep really well at night. I don't have 4 a.m. phone calls to tell me the servers have gone down and the press is on the phone and all this kind of shit.
And so if you were to start Monzo today, what are the things that you think would be easier?
I think coding probably is more productive. Like being able to use coding agents should be easier. If I started Monzo today, I'd look really heavily into stablecoin, probably. Like I don't think you could start Monzo the way it started 10 years ago. The world has moved on. I am sort of surprised there's not a mainstream version of Monzo in the US. There's no neobank in the US. There's like Chime, which is for somewhat lower income people, basically. But I think Chase Sapphire and American Express have kind of got a duopoly on the kind of premium audience. So I'd maybe go and look at that. But I could talk about this a long time, and I'm happy to talk about it afterwards. That's what we're here for.
And Monzo is in the US now, or?
It is, and it's not been as successful as the UK, I think it's fair to say. We've had a small team here for like 7 years, just chipping away, but they've not got quite the right product configuration yet.
No, great. From the outside, it looks like the YC batches are getting younger. Is that because I'm getting older, or is that real?
I think they probably are getting a little younger, yes. That is not intentional from our side, I don't think. Our applicant base is getting younger as well. And I think there are 2 reasons here. and I wish I could put the genie back in the bottle, in a sense. I think the two reasons are that there's a sort of meme amongst young people that AGI or ASI is coming in like 2 years, and you don't want to be relegated to the permanent you've got to like climb up the ladder and make your wealth before AGI comes, otherwise it's game over for you. I don't think that's true. People think we've only got 2 years left to build stuff. I also don't think that's true. That's one reason. Genuinely, people are dropping out of college and not going to college. They're turning down jobs to try and build stuff because there's this mind virus that there's limited time. And the second is that the availability of seed funding to younger and younger founders has got greater and greater and greater. So we might see a team, 19 years old, we're like, really, we think you should stay in college. Complete your CS degree. We'd love to see you in a couple of years. But the reality is we know they will get funding from we will never see them again. We could try to say, no, like stay, but the market is funding them, and unless we want to miss out, we just have to follow that.
Another thing I've seen a lot people talking about in the YC and startup community now is this idea of 996, that you should be in the office all the time, locked in. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think this is a really complicated subject. I think anyone who tells you you can build a successful startup in the early days without an incredible amount of hard work and focus and probably sacrifice is lying to you. Like it took everything I had. You're trying to create life from nothing to try and instill it with momentum when by default it's just dead. So yeah, it takes a lot, and we were probably working 6 or 7 days a week for the first 2 years. Yeah. I don't think it scales particularly well. And I think at Monzo, I never had to ask anyone to work harder. I never said, this is 996. I never put it in my job ads. I think it's become performative in a way that I don't like. Look, there are many, many ways to run a company. The way I chose to do it was I hired the smartest people I possibly could, and I would try to give them as much responsibility and autonomy as early as I could, and explain to them, hey, you're building this card processor. This is vital for us because we're wasting 15 million a year on card processing. So if we don't fix this, the company is doomed. And we do that with 10 or 12 engineers. Like each of you has a vitally important task, and it really is genuinely vital to the survival of the company. And then all I had to do was try to stop them burning out, actually, right? Like I'd never go to any of them and be like, hey, why aren't you in, it's 6 p.m. on a Saturday, why aren't you in the office? I would go to people and say, I've not seen you take a day off in a while. Like, you need to take a holiday. If you find great people who are incredibly smart and ambitious, and they believe in your mission, and you've given them huge responsibility, I don't think you need to be slave driving, right? You're doing something wrong. So for me, it's about like responsibility and accountability, and then managing like burnout. That was a main thing I worried about genuinely.
And with the companies in YC now, are you opinionated on whether they should stay in SF after, or if it's okay to go back to where they're from? And
unless you have a compelling reason to do otherwise, I would encourage founders to work together in person, and for that location to be San Francisco. Because I think there is an energy, an ambition, and a focus about this place that is unlike anywhere else on the planet. Maybe there are reasons. We couldn't start Monzo in the US in 2015, actually. We needed the banking regulation in the UK. But 90+% of companies, I believe, should be in person. They should be in the Bay Area. I just think it gives you a really unfair advantage. We have stats at YC that basically companies that stay in the Bay Area outperform other companies. Even pick New York. New York versus San Francisco. Companies that stay in the Bay Area grow revenue about twice as quickly in San Francisco, and raise about twice as much money at twice the valuation. San Francisco versus New York. It's like, you pick. Which one do you want?
Counterexample.
And they're always counterexamples. Like Dealism. You guys are great. Deal's great. But they are two or three rare examples in 6,000 companies that we see. So it absolutely can be done. There are, I think, infinite ways to run companies, but if you want the best chance of success, I just stack the odds in your favor.
Yeah. I always think of for us, it definitely feels like a competitive advantage because we're not fighting over talent in a particular city. We don't have to make trade-offs between people who are the very best at what they do and are just genuinely great people.
Yeah.
Because we have this global hiring pool. But there are definitely trade-offs. I mean, I have to do calls at 7 a.m., 11 p.m., everything in between. But so far, it's working well for us.
Seems to be working well for you guys.
Yeah, let's see. Good. Well, Tom, thanks a lot for speaking to us today.
Thanks.
And for hosting us.
Been really fun. Thank you.